everybody, and welcome to Feature Focus, your DevCycle monthly changelog stream. My name is Andrew, your friendly neighborhood DevCycle developer advocate, and I am super excited to have you here for this changelog because it is going to be a big one. So big, in fact, that I brought in the big guns, invited our CTO, Jonathan Norris, to join me on stream today to talk about some of the really cool stuff that we've been up to in the month of November. How is it almost the end of the year? I'm gonna pull Jonathan on to stream right now. Jonathan, how's it going, my friend?
Hey Andrew, good to hear from you. Yeah, it's doing good. It's starting to turn to winter here, but no, we've been busy in November working on a bunch of things. So happy to chat and talk through things and what we've been working on and maybe some of the partnerships and things that we've been working on as well.
Yeah, I love it. So I'm excited to share, and I think I told you this before, but if you're watching on stream on Twitch, which is normally where we stream, we're now everywhere. So we are streaming on LinkedIn right now, we're streaming on Twitch, we're streaming on YouTube, and we're streaming on X. If you're on any of those channels and you want to chat with us during today's stream, I think really the only place I'm going to be paying attention to, just because of the way that it integrates, is going to be on Twitch and YouTube. So head over to either one of those if you've got questions, if you just want to engage, if you want to say hello. That's what we're here for. That's what these streams are all about. So speaking about what these streams are all about and who we are and what this whole thing is and who the heck you are, aside from being our awesome co-founder and CTO, Jonathan, this is always the part of the show where I throw to my guest before I kind of intro what we're going to be talking about, so I can go and do a tech check elsewhere. So I'm gonna pull myself off stream and throw over to you to kind of share, maybe for anybody that's new to this stream, what DevCycle is. Like maybe a little bit of its history, and then more importantly, who you are and like why the heck you're here today. All right, I'm going to turn it over to you, Jonathan, and I'm going to go and make sure that our channels are all working for us.
Okay, sounds good. Quick intro on myself and I guess DevCycle. So for those of you who don't know, DevCycle, we're a feature flagging platform, really built around trying to make it easier for teams to adopt feature flags in their developer workflows. So really focused on how you organize and manage feature flags at scale. So if you have hundreds or thousands of flags built into your code base, helping make that process a lot easier, making it a lot more visible where those flags are throughout your developer workflow, be it in your IDE, with like IDE plugins. We have a great CLI that you can interface with. Obviously, a great sort of web user interface that really has a great design that makes it really visible and obvious of where your flags are, and all the way to sort of like cleaning up and in managing your flags sort of once you get to that scale. And we see it time and time again. We just heard from one of our customers today that the adoption of feature flags like helped them reduce the number of incidents they have by 90%, which is just like, it's one of those things you hear from a customer and you're like, wow, like that is just a crazy stat. And how the simple fact of adding a feature flag, which at its simplest case is just wrapping parts of your code in basically Boolean logic flag or some more complex sort of like string or JSON flag or something like that, gives you that flexibility to maintain your code and ship your code much safer. So like you can, how we use it internally at DevCycle is that we're basically all of our software is continuously being deployed, but every new feature that we build, we wrap in a feature flag. And so what that allows us is that the developers or the team that's working on that feature can feel that like, hey, we can merge this pretty beta early code into production and into our main branch, and deploy it to production, and know that it's not actually enabled for anyone in production outside of like the team that's working on it to start with. And then as we get further along in the development process, we'll open up those features for like everyone internally, to QA, things like that, and then we actually pretty regularly go through a process where we enable feature flags for like our beta customers that we may be like working with to build certain features. So that's kind of a high level of feature flags and what we do. Myself, I can do a quick intro. I've been working in mobile A/B testing and feature flag industry for about over 10 years now, which is just totally wild. We've been working together with the other co-founders, and a lot of the employees here at DevCycle have been together for over 5 or 6 years, and I've been working with the co-founders for I think it's about 12 years now in total. Coming up in January, I think is like our 10 years since we did YC together back in winter 2014. So we've been sort of working in this space for a long time and have a lot of experience working with large enterprise customers and customers of all sorts to run A/B tests and feature flags and help teams adopt these methodologies to move faster and safer. And that's kind of what I've been working on behind the scenes for many years. So yeah,
it was a great introduction and perfectly timed introduction.
Nice.
Because while you were doing that, the internet at this co-working space stopped working.
Oh.
And I literally I had to see what my backup plan was going to be. So thank you, Jonathan. This was the true tech check of all tech checks.
Nice.
The joys. Now I get to send a fun email after this stream. But we get to test out Freedom Mobile's unlimited data plan. So let's go. All right. So it'll work. It's fine. It's all running now. Worst case scenario, Jonathan, if there's anybody that's got this stream, it's gonna be you. So So thank you for that introduction, Jonathan, to not only like the DevCycle platform and yourself. And so now I'll kind of take the stage just for a second before I turn things over to Jonathan to give everybody kind of a rundown of what this stream is all about if you've never been here before. Or if you're catching the start of this stream in a VOD and you're like, what is going to happen over the next sort of like 40 minutes of this video? So in these changelogs, we look at some really cool things that have happened over the past month in terms of just either content that we've created or updates to the platform, or just cool stuff that we've been doing that we think is interesting to the folks that are using the DevCycle platform or that are part of the DevCycle community. So we're going to go through, I think we're going to do like 2 kind of bigger ones today. We're going to be talking about our new open feature providers. Open feature is right, that thing right there. There we go. We're going to talk a little bit more about what that is, and I may have missed Jonathan explaining it already, but if you didn't hear yet, you're going to hear soon. We're also going to talk about something kind of like adjacent to open feature, which is going to be our recent trip to KubeCon CloudNativeCon North America in Chicago, where Jonathan and I both were earlier this month. And then at the end of the stream, at the end of the video, if you stick around, we're going to be giving away free stuff. So every stream that I do for Feature Focus, there's an opportunity for you if you join our Discord community. Oh, I told you how you get it. Anyways, I'm not going to tell you how you actually get it. But we're giving away $20 gift cards. They can be used anywhere around the world. They're digital gift cards. They get sent to your email. So if you want a chance to find out how to win one of those gift cards, it's very easy. Basically, you just stick around and then I'll tell you. Head on or stick around till the end or fast forward to the end and you'll find out how to get those. But that's not why you're here. You're here because you love feature flagging. You love all things that are feature flagging. And if you do, then you certainly love open feature. And I think Jonathan is gonna kind of talk a little bit about why we are such huge fans of open feature and some of the stuff that we've been doing over the past like 6 weeks, I guess. To kind of show our love for what everybody's doing over at open feature.
Cool. Let me run through it. Let me just share their homepage so we can start talking through it. Can you see that there, Andrew?
Yeah, it's up on the screen now.
All right, cool. So open feature. This is a new CNCF project. And for those who don't know what the CNCF is, it's called the Cloud Native Computing Foundation, which incubates a lot of the larger open source projects in sort of the cloud native ecosystem. So things like Kubernetes and Prometheus and Open Telemetry and now Open Feature are sort of good examples of projects that you may have heard of or used or currently use today. And so Open Feature is a fairly new project. It's been around for a couple of years. And the goal behind it is to create kind of a standardized interface to feature flagging. So you can have one common interface that you use, and you can plug in different providers or different sources into that interface. So it's, as they state here, it's a open source specification that provides a vendor agnostic community driven API for feature flagging that works with basically all the feature flag management tools out there. And this really sort of helps reduce vendor lock-in. It makes it much easier for teams that might have like an internal tool that they've been using for a while, and don't want to, say, create a new library or SDK for that internal tool for a new language they might be using. They might start being like, hey, this team wants to use Rust, but like our Java feature flagging tool doesn't support Rust, and so you can use the Open Feature to sort of be that interface to that new language. And actually, I don't believe Open Feature has Rust yet, so I shouldn't have used that example. Maybe using Go is a better example. But yeah, it allows you to have more portability. So in the future, if you want to, say, migrate from that internal tool to a vendor that can give you a bunch more functionality on top of that internal tool, you already have the interface in place, and you can just sort of swap out and plug in the vendor into your existing feature flag system. So it's very simple. You'll see here, you basically just set a provider, you get a client, and then you have a very simple interface for getting values, and we'll get into more details on that soon. And there's a bunch of tools that have various levels of support for Open Feature, and we've kind of over the last couple of weeks tried to basically have full support for the full range of Open Feature platforms that are available. So like C#, Go, Java, JavaScript on the back end and front end, PHP, and as well, there's also a beta Python SDK that we support as well. So I'll get into some of the details. Any initial questions, Andrew, on what Open Feature is before we get into the details?
So I think one of the interesting things about Open Feature is it's fairly new onto the CNCF scene, right? Like this is not this isn't a standard that's been around for a while, right? So they've just really started to come into their own, but they're doing super well right now. Like we got to see them at this is not a question. How involved are they within the CNCF ecosystem? So like, are they an official project of CNCF, or are they just kind of like a thing that is associated with CNCF?
Yes, I just pulled up this vote. So how CNCF works, everything's an open source, everything's really through GitHub. And so you can actually see here, how CNCF works is there's various stages of a project. There's kind of what are called sandbox projects, which are like very young, early projects that maybe have one group that's supporting it. And then for a project to advance to incubation, they want to see sort of a healthy community that has grown around that project, to have multiple different maybe vendors or companies that are supporting that project, and the project has been used by multiple companies in production environments for a period of time. And so that's kind of where Open Feature is that it just got voted 2 days ago that the vote passed to move Open Feature from a sandbox project to an incubating project. And along with that brings more visibility to the project, and brings more resources to the project, and trying to shepherd it onto sort of like a graduated project, probably in many years to come, where it's a sort of a well-established standard within the wider ecosystem. So this is kind of, I would say, step 2 towards that, and there's kind of a long road ahead in incubation to like really try and grow the project to be the standard across the industry of how folks interface with feature flagging. And I can kind of show, if I change my screen share one more time, so you can see on this.
So got a little comment there, little fire comment. I like it.
Nice. So if you can see on this page, all the various, these are all the incubating projects that are in the CNCF right now. And so Open Feature, I think, is the newest. But you can see things like OpenTelemetry, Knative, KubeEdge, gRPC, Dapper, our Backstage. These are all sort of Falco. Like, these are all projects that if you're in this ecosystem, you might have, Crossplane is another big one, you might have heard about before. And these are at the bottom here, I think some of the newer ones. So Open Feature is definitely new. Like, you can look at just like GitHub stars, you can kind of hard to see that. Yeah, Open Feature has like 400, and some of these bigger projects have like 25,000 stars, right? Not that stars is like the perfect metric, but it just shows you that where feature flagging is going. So and where this project is sort of just in its starting stage, but it's definitely able to be used in production, and lots of companies, large companies are behind it and using it in production. So
I don't know if you showed, Jonathan. I tried to reconnect to the other network, but for the world of CNCF, like, what is a project that someone might have heard of that has gone through that graduation process and is now kind of like the de facto standard? Like, what's one that comes to mind for you?
So what comes to mind for me would be obviously Kubernetes.
Yeah.
Right? Like, let me see if I can actually do incubating, so you can do graduated projects. So Argo is another big one. I think that graduated at the last KubeCon. Prometheus is a really big sort of metrics and logging. Envoy, which is a big proxy layer, Flux, FluentD. So yeah, these are all sort of the graduated projects. Containerd, but yeah, Kubernetes is probably the biggest one that everyone's heard of, out of the CNCF.
Yeah, I love that. And it's interesting too. I recently saw that Flux. So Flux is a very well known. They actually have a feature management functionality built into them, and I've been poking around to see, but feature management has been around for a while, and so like now I think it's having its moment, right? Like, people are realizing just how valuable this is in the grand scheme of developing in a new way.
Yes, I'll get into the Open Feature side of things, and show you, I guess, give folks like a detailed run through of how to set up Open Feature. So, so at a high level, like, how Open Feature works is that you obviously have your application and you install the Open Feature SDK. And they call it their feature flagging client, and throughout your code, you're sort of calling that client to get values for a certain feature flag, and say, should this feature flag be on or off for this specific sort of user context, and that reaches out to whatever feature flagging service. So in this example, it's kind of like maybe an external feature flagging service that you're running within your infrastructure, but in DevCycle's case, we're actually running our SDKs locally sort of within your code, and so there wouldn't be any sort of external API calls for that. But yeah, that's kind of the high level, and yeah, you can kind of see see the example here. There's the Open Feature SDK and the Open Feature Provider that sort of bolts onto that to do that. And you can, if in certain cases, you might make calls out to the cloud or to some external service to do that.
And yeah, it's a great name for a feature flagging service. I mean, I know it's just there as a placeholder for them, but somebody, if you're out there and you are thinking, I need to create a new feature management service, flags are us. It might be some trademark infringements, but I think it's worth it.
Yeah, I wonder how our us is, if that's a trademark thing or not. But yeah, setting up a provider is pretty simple. You install, we'll use TypeScript as an example here, but you basically add the Open Feature Server SDK of your choice. You set the provider, and so this is where, and I'll show with DevCycle RDocs, you basically just set the DevCycle provider here. And then what you're doing is you're creating a client, and the client is kind of the interface for actually fetching the flag values. And generally, you would just use a single client for your whole application, but you may want to set up multiple clients for certain use cases. But in general, I think most folks would just sort of set up, create a single client to reuse throughout their application. And then you're just getting flag values. So you doing await client.get Boolean value for the key, the flag key here called Boolean flag, and then default value of false. And you can see examples here for strings and integers and JSON objects, all pretty straightforward. It all looks basically the same throughout different languages here. And so, and then I guess one important thing to note is all of these have a default value. So if the underlying provider fails or the internet fails or something fails, you'll always receive the default value. So when using feature flags, it's important to, at minimum, have tests for your default case or your off case, so that if you do need to disable a new feature flag, you're confident that you have tests that cover the off state, so that if things go bad, your code sort of won't crash and it will continue to function as expected. And then there are you can get more detailed responses. So you can get a full object that has the value, the key, a reason, a variance, and some error code. So generally you would just use the simplified interface, but if you want to get more details, you can. And then, we talked about providers, which we'll get into more. Providers are a pretty simple interface. So if you want to create your own provider, I can show you ours. It's a fairly simple interface. There's some initialization stuff that you should do. And then there are kind of these resolve Boolean evaluation, resolve string evaluation functions that you need to implement, where you're given the flag key, the default value, and a context, which I'll get into in a second, what a context is. And then you can use all that data to evaluate the value that a flag should receive. And so, implementing these various providers has been pretty straightforward for us overall. And there's a couple caveats that I'll get into, but nothing too crazy. Evaluation context is important to understand. Generally, the evaluation context, you can kind of think of it as the user object that you're trying to evaluate. So if you're using Open Feature on maybe an API route handler where your front-end application is making a request to an API with some user data, you would set that user data on the Open Feature context so that you can specify in the rules for your feature flag which users should get a specific value of your feature flag. So they name it as a context because it might not be just user information. It might be server information or other kind of non-user based information, and that's why they use the term context. And you might have global data or context specific data that you might use. But basically, yeah, all this context data is kind of merged and used during the evaluation process. So yeah, the important thing is there always needs to be like some kind of like targeting key. So with all feature flag systems, and some of these handle them a bit differently, but there needs to be like a key that you're targeting. And generally this is like a user ID or like a hashed user ID or something like that. Some type of like consistent key, so you know that when that user or that context makes a second request to your API, they're going to get the same values for that feature flag on the next request. There needs to be like that consistency across evaluations, if that makes sense. Does that make sense, Andrew?
It makes perfect sense.
Let me know if I'm going off.
This is the best. I'm just like I'm so loving this because I feel as though open feature has been like a big part of our conversation over the last little while, but like the implementation is constantly evolving. So I remember looking at open feature like even 8 months ago, and it wasn't where it is today, right? Like there just wasn't as well structured I mean, there was good documentation, all the rest of that, but they've really worked out a lot of the kinks that exist in there. And like this process you're describing now, like it's so smooth. It's so smooth to start to integrate these into your workflow.
Yeah, and some of the cool things you can do, like you can add hooks. So this is kind of similar to some of the functionality we have in our SDK. So if you want hooks to kind of call back when a flag is evaluated, so like before it's evaluated or after it's evaluated, or if there's an error, or at the end, you can kind of set up these hooks to sort of like catch those different situations. So that can be useful for certain workflows. And then events. So there's kind of specific event types that you can listen for. So like a provider is ready, or a configuration has changed, or there, again, error states. So if you want to sort of listen for provider errors, using the event handler is probably the best way to do that. Yeah, and this is actually, I don't know if I've seen this page before, but yeah, this is kind of like their compatibility overview of where the release versions for the various SDKs, where they're at, what features they support, and how sort of the project is going. Yeah, Python is kind of the newest one on the back end that's being worked on. We have support for it, but it's still in some active development. So if you're a Python dev, like jump into the Slack channel and the GitHub and help out. Yeah, and the client side is also new, which I'll get into maybe later. So open feature, I guess, for the last couple of years has really mostly been sort of server side feature flagging, and we're kind of just in the process of launching client side SDKs. So things like web SDKs, React SDKs, Next.js, Android, iOS, Flutter, React Native, kind of all of those kind of SDKs are what's next, I would say, for open feature, because you want that full parity across the server side and the client side. And I won't get into too much, but there are some interesting differences between how you handle client side and server SDK. So we can imagine on a website, the user context is generally always a single user, right? Like there's only really like one person that's using a website. And so when you set a user ID, or you set some data about that user that you want to use throughout that session, it's pretty much always going to be consistent, right? Where on the server side, every time you're evaluating your flag, you're probably evaluating for a different context. So there's probably a different user attached to each API route handler or event that you're going through on the server side. So that's kind of one of the core differentiators between how server SDKs and client-side SDKs work. And yeah, I can jump into our docs on open feature.
Yeah, let's do it.
So as I said, these are the various compatible SDKs we have now: Node.js, Go, Java, .NET, Python, and now client-side JavaScript one. But yeah, we'll go into this and show a simple example of what you need to do. So for Node.js, you basically need to initialize DevCycle, same as you would in any other situation. And then you need to set the open feature provider using sort of that DevCycle client. And then again, you need to get an open feature client object. And this is kind of what you'll be using to evaluate flags and so you basically can set a context on that open feature client and then evaluate flags to your heart's content. And so that's kind of like the high level of all you need to do. And there may be the reason why we support sort of you creating the DevCycle client outside of the provider is there's certain functionality on the DevCycle SDK that you might still want to have access to do things like logging or certain types of integrations and things like that. But the majority of like your interactions and getting flag values should be done through the open feature interface to make that more portable.
I love that.
Yeah, go ahead.
You don't need, like, it's really 3 extra lines of code really that you're writing in here to like enable open feature within an existing DevCycle or alt. I mean, I'm assuming that most other providers are the same. Like business or feature flag services. This is like the beauty of this is that you're really not having to shift your mindset very much. It's really just sort of like keep what you have there and now move over and try and implement the open feature to see if it has the same sort of speed and parity, which it obviously should.
Yeah, and then you still have the option to like, I don't know, pass in all of your DevCycle options. You can configure our SDK as needed. Again, targeting key. So for DevCycle, we support you setting a targeting key in the context like you do here, or you can use our user ID sort of paradigm as in the context, and we'll support that. And for example, with DevCycle, there's a bunch of kind of like pre-known properties like user ID, email, name, country, app version, app build, all these sort of custom fields that we support by default in our SDKs. We also support you setting those through the open feature context, and we kind of just map those internally to our own DevCycle user. And so, yeah, feel free to use any of these standard properties as context values. And then I guess there's a couple caveats that you should know for using DevCycle with the context. We only support flat JSON properties using the context. So for example, here we have a key, an OBJ key with an object. We won't sort of support the object value here will be ignored. If you want to send sort of custom key value data, it needs to be sent through either our custom data object or our private custom data object. And then, yeah, JSON flag limitations. So one of the odd things about JSON data is that like you wouldn't think of it, but just like an integer value like 610 here is considered valid JSON data, right? Or a Boolean is considered like valid JSON data, which for a lot of feature flag vendors is an odd thing to have because we already have like a Boolean type, right? Or we have a number type, or we have a string type. And traditionally for us, when we think about JSON like flag values, we're thinking about like JSON objects, and that's kind of how we treat them. We treat them as mainly as just sort of JSON objects. And if you try to sort of use number values or Boolean or string or null values, we will sort of like throw errors and use whatever the default value you have set, because that's not sort of how our system is designed to use, if that makes sense.
It does.
But yeah, that's basically the high level. It's pretty simple. It gives you an interface where, yeah, if you want to start using open feature and maybe hook it up to like an internal system or a really simple flag provider that you just want to get started with, great. And then at a later date, you want to migrate to DevCycle and use all of our features and functionalities that we have on top of just like a standard feature flag provider, then you basically just need to swap in our provider for your own and sort of go to the races and start using DevCycle through your existing feature flags that you already have set up in your code. And kind of that's the real advantage of using open feature is the portability, the being able to migrate across different providers and going from an in-house solution to a provider like ours is really easy, and it reduces that lock-in, so you don't need to go through thousands of lines of code and swap out sort of like all of your flag evaluation code. You just need to sort of swap out a provider and a couple lines of code, and you can swap over.
Yeah, I love that. And it's so interesting. I think I'll ask you this question, then I'll give my take. But I think it's interesting that we put all this work into this, because at the end of the day, DevCycle, we're a SaaS platform. So like we rely on sort of customers paying to kind of use our service. So why, like on your side, Jonathan, like why have we jumped into this like open feature world so deeply?
Yeah, I think we see the value in it. Like for us, our goal is to try to provide the best developer experience to our customers. And one of the biggest pain points and that we hear from our customers or potential customers is just the cost of migration of moving from an existing internal tool or an existing sort of large large feature flag provider to us, is that migration cost, is the risk of sort of making all that code change going from one interface to another. And open feature is really here to help solve that. It's like providing a new sort of simplified standard interface that you can use, and it reduces the risk of jumping into a new platform. And then it's on us as DevCycle to prove that the experience of using the DevCycle UI and CLI and ID integrations and the product as a whole from end to end is that much better, that you'll sort of stick with us. But really it helps teams sell internally that yes, like we're not locked into this thing. We can test it out. We can hook it up to an internal system. We can easily sort of migrate providers as needed, and see if like using feature flags through DevCycle provides a great user experience or not.
Yeah, it's interesting. I heard a recent conversation about someone that was migrating between feature management platforms, and they said the way that they did this is they had a wrapper around their feature flags, like internally how they built it, and they ended up testing, like so they went from having one feature flag provider to pulling both feature flag providers into this wrapper and evaluating and doing analytics against that to ensure that like not only did it work, but they basically had a backup to the backup as part of that migration process. And I'm like, this was a fairly large like organization that had the capability to do that in the time, but like so many orgs don't. And so something like this is huge.
Yeah, I think we hear that a lot of that, like I just don't have time to do the migration, or like our company can't like handle that risk right now, right? But yeah, having this open standardized interface, it's very similar for if any orgs out there, if you've migrated to open telemetry, which is a similar thing where it's an open interface to like your monitoring and telemetry and logs and things like that in your application. So for example, if you're like a big heavy user of Datadog and you want to switch to a different provider that's maybe more cost effective, using the open telemetry sort of interface has really simplified that process and made that a much sort of easier process to switch between providers in kind of that space. And that's really sort of what I guess open feature the project has been modeled on, is the example set out by Open Telemetry. And I know we were both at KubeCon, and pretty much every telemetry logging booth had sort of Open Telemetry as a supported platform, and really sort of like every booth was talking about it there, and we expect we expect the same thing to happen in the feature flagging industry.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think just like quickly before we kind of move on to KubeCon stuff for a couple of minutes, I think the other interesting thing is I've had this conversation with a lot of people. So moving to a feature flag provider like a DevCycle or an alternative, there's sort of like two tiers, because feature flagging is like, it's not a new concept, but it's like kind of become more popular recently. And I feel like there's a philosophical switch that you need to make as an organization to like start using feature flags in a really meaningful way. And then there's the, okay, I've chosen that I'm going to do this process better, and now I'm going to choose somebody that's going to help me do that. And I feel like open feature is like at that top sort of like level of philosophy of development. Like they're kind of setting that stage of like, hey, we're making this, that we're in this education plane, we're in this space where we really want to make this concept as accessible to you as possible. And then once they're in, then they can kind of choose a provider, and like being part of that conversation about that the philosophical journey, or like the reason why you would feature flag. Like that's something that you as a vendor could never do yourself. Like us or anybody else, we just don't have the kind of resources to reach the global market of development teams that are needing to use feature flags. So I'm super, I think like the whole concept of us being involved in this in a really meaningful way is so powerful to sort of say, listen, we want you to move to this, and we'd love for you to use the DevCycle platform, but at the end of the day, we just want you using feature flags. Like, do better development.
Yeah, and we're trying, us as an org, we obviously didn't found open feature or anything like that, but we're trying to get involved at a really deep level now, and helping to push the open feature ecosystem forward and support it as much as we can. There's lots of great folks who've been doing a lot of the hard legwork, and especially a lot of great folks from Dynatrace who really sort of founded the open feature initiative, and it's spread to sort of a wider, more diverse community that is supporting it now. And we're hoping to continue to invest in it and improve it. And I'm definitely getting involved on like the client side of things. They've really, I think, gotten to a good place on the server side where it's being used in a lot of production environments. And we have a lot of expertise building out, like doing mobile A/B testing for 10 years. And I've built a lot of SDKs, and our SDKs have evaluated trillions of flags and A/B tests across the decade. So we have lots of experience where we can help out and help open feature move into sort of the client-side SDK space. So things like mobile SDKs and web SDKs and a lot of those cross-platform SDKs like Flutter and React Native, we can help out with as well, and look forward to sort of supporting the future of where open feature is going. And there's a lot of interesting discussions around like common API standards and common schema standards that are happening within the community. So if you're interested in any of this, get involved, join the Slack channel in CNCF, and there's kind of bi-weekly, every 2 weeks, there's sort of a meeting where we all get together and discuss these things. There's also a governance board and technical board. I'm going to be hopefully joining in the new year the governance board and getting more directly involved in that. We look forward to supporting and helping open feature grow over the coming years.
Love that. So speaking of open feature, we were talking about this earlier. I don't want to spend a huge amount of time on this, but so we actually, Jonathan, myself, actually, hold on here. Togglebot made it too, but our whole team. So Terrene, Emma, Kobe, Anthony, Jonathan, Mark, and myself were in Chicago earlier in November. This was also like the final day. All of our swag disappeared because people were loving what we had, except for the stickers, which now decorate my office. And it was a great team. But we created a Togglebot costume. And we're lucky enough actually to be able to in the first evening, I guess, that we were there, go and meet the guys behind Open Feature from Dynatrace. So this is Todd and Michael, right?
Yeah.
And so they had a small booth there as well, and the team was there showcasing it. So Togglebot had a busy day actually, because not only was Togglebot there, but I need to mute that because that's loud in my ears. Togglebot versus Jonathan and Kobe. Jonathan absolutely just dominated in this. This was like an inflatable hungry hippos, which was so much fun.
Yeah, that was fun.
It was so
I feel like I had an unfair advantage against Togglebot there, with the head and the lack of disposable fingers on the Togglebot costume made this a little difficult.
Oh my goodness! But
no idea who was in that. That costume.
There's nobody in it. Togglebot is Togglebot. There could never be anybody inside. But yeah, it was a great. I think, and here's one of our winners of we gave away. We had some branded Theraguns. So we actually had, if you look in the back left-hand corner here, we had a claw machine during this event that we were like, people could play the game and they could win surprizes, and our big kind of giveaway was a Theragun. We also gave away a Lego bicycle scooter. It was as close as we could get to a bicycle. And people seem to really engage with it. But I'm curious, like I said, I don't want to spend huge amount of time on this, but like, what was kind of the biggest like aha moment or takeaway from you, Jonathan, for like that KubeCon week that we were there?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it just helped solidify a lot of conversations we've been having around the importance of like, obviously there's certain people who are educating them on what feature flags are, right? And how they can use feature flags within their development workflows. But pretty much most people who came by were like, oh yeah, I know what feature flags are. Like, let's have a chat about feature flags. It's like, I use them, I love them or hate them in certain ways. Like, let's talk through the details, right? And so a lot of discussions were like, yeah, how feature flags can really help teams move faster or safer, things like that. And then on the challenging side, they're like, all right, my team loves feature flags, but now like we have all this tech debt. Like, what do we do about it? Like, let's have a conversation about how to clean it up. And so we had a lot of those conversations. And then, yeah, just learning about like what tools and what different services people are using for feature flagging right now, and maybe why they would consider DevCycle. And I think we learned that, like, yeah, a lot of it is just like internal tools and simple implementations of feature flags that folks are mainly using, and for larger orgs are struggling to maintain, and are looking for a provider to sort of take on that responsibility in sort of a cost-effective way that can help their teams move faster and help them organize their feature flags better. And that's really what we're here to provide. So lots of great discussions with a bunch of different companies that we hadn't talked to previously. And I think in general, folks understood what feature flags were, and we're excited to learn more and how we can help them with our own product.
Yeah, there were some great, like, really, really good deep dives of people being like, yeah, I get that, but now, like, show me the cool stuff. Like, show me the thing that kind of, like, you can do with feature flags now. And we were able to do, I think, and this was Kobe's idea, and I think it was a great one. We have a feature that we'll talk about in just a second, our audit logging, that's in development right now. And we were able to, like, showcase us using feature flags in real time to do that. And like, I think that becomes more powerful than like, here's how easy it is to use our platform to do this in prod, like with our own team. And so if we're willing to do it with ours, I think that dog fooding concept is huge.
Yeah, it was maybe a little bit scary for our team, but yeah, we were dog fooding our brand new beta features on the floor of KubeCon, switching things on and off. So it was it was quite a lot of fun.
It was. All right, so we got a couple minutes left. Let's and I always like to do a couple things in here, and one of the big ones is just to actually go into our public roadmap and kind of look at things that are coming up. We talked a lot about open feature today. Expect that that's gonna kind of keep happening over the next little while. But we got a lot of other things that we're doing. So we got some DevCycle specific things that are happening right now that are definitely worth like being aware of. I think the next one that people are going to see is going to be that audit logging, right? That's our next big feature coming out.
I think they're just I was just reading that they're flipping the switch right now, so it should be available.
Hey, there we go. So that's about to go from now to launched. But yeah, we're also working.
Are we doing that just by flipping a toggle and in DevCycle without shipping any new code, right?
I love
Separating deploying code from launching features. One of the magics of feature flags.
It was so planned. We knew this was happening because nothing says we work in a tech company like deploying to prod on a Friday with no fear.
Oh yeah.
I love it. But we didn't need to deploy. We just needed it was already.
We didn't need to deploy any code. The code's already there. It's just getting tested.
And we could easily turn it off, right?
And like we were testing it in production. Yeah, we were testing it all in production. So.
I love it. Other exciting things coming up. I know we've been talking about this for a while, but it's huge for us. SOC 2 Type 1 certification. So we're in the process for this. So if you're a big enterprise company looking to use DevCycle, we're here for you. We know you care about SOC 2. So do we. And so our teams are really busy working on that. I don't know, where are you working on the Cloudflare workers, Jonathan? Is this like a you baby?
Yeah, I have been a bit. I've been a little bit distracted because we've been working also on SOC 2, and then we're also likely launching in the coming weeks our Next.js SDK. I would say that's probably going to come out before that, which we should get up on this list. But yeah, Next.js is sort of our next, I guess, big platform that we're looking to support with a fully native experience. You should probably get Adam on the next one of these to talk through it. There's some really cool technical stuff that, like, Next.js is, for those who don't know, it's very interesting how it meshes server-side rendering of web pages with client-side rendering, and that's meant there's a lot of complications for how you make feature flags work across the client side and server side, but we've done a lot of interesting work to sort of make that work seamlessly across the client side and server side. And maybe next time you can get Adam on here to talk about it. That's kind of our, I would say, the next big thing that our team is going to be launching.
Yeah, interesting. So I'm doing a series with the DevRel team from OneSignal, and we were working on a Next.js project and trying to integrate OneSignal and DevCycle into this project, and we're running into a whole bunch of lifecycle issues, and so we eventually abandoned React altogether and just went to like a vanilla JS world, which worked so much easier for both of us. But so stay tuned for that. That's going to be really exciting. Lots of other stuff coming up soon as well. Like, some of this stuff is actually launched and we just need to update. So I think the feature status is in prod right now. I think you can access this if you're a general user.
Yeah, and the lifecycle stuff, I think a bunch of that is in prod as well. So maybe after this we'll go and get some updates on the roadmap.
Yeah, go update this. So and we won't go do it in a huge way today, but check out I think it's in our docs right now. You can actually get the overview of status and lifecycle, so you can kind of see what this is all about. Docs are in like a state of now continuation as we're trying to make these a little bit better for you. So stay tuned for more changes in there as well. And then other things that are kind of on our future pipeline, audience imports. We've got There's a lot of work being done right now on example applications. I don't know necessarily around downloadable example applications, but certainly like having better examples for you to be able to go and not just like install the SDK into something you already have, but to be able to just like start with DevCycle really, really quickly.
I know that team is running towards like creating a really great sort of onboarding experience for people getting into the platform, using example apps, potentially like automatically, working on like automatically installing DevCycle into certain apps, things like that are definitely ideas that we're playing with and thinking about. So trying to make that initial experience as good as possible.
Yeah, and it's huge. Now, you may be watching this stream or watching the VOD and saying to yourself, I have an idea that I did not see reflected on here, Andrew and Jonathan. Where can I go to submit these ideas? Well, there's a big blue button in the upper left right-hand corner up here. You can submit your ideas here. If you submit it, it goes into our product team's backlog. They'll do whatever they need to do with it. But it'll definitely be entered in there. You give your email, you'll get updates when things change on there. But the other place that you can go, and this is my nice little segue. Oh, come on, Mac. There we go. My nice little segue is you can head over to our Discord channel, which you can access at the link that is down there, bit.ly/DevCycle Discord. And it will send you over here to our Discord server where you can also submit feedback. So we have this Ask DevCycle, channel here. You can throw in a feature request in here. You can throw a question in here. We will categorize it. Our team is constantly looking at this. So use this if you've got an idea for a feature as well. Also, every Thursday, I am here in Discord for office hours for about an hour over sort of the Pacific lunchtime. So like kind of end of day on the East Coast. And middle of the night for people in Europe. But I'm around. So if you've got ideas that you don't want to put on paper or digitally on paper, I guess, and you just want to have a conversation, I'm here. And you can actually reach out to basically every single person on the DevCycle team is here. So you can at Jonathan, you can at any of us, if you've got questions or comments or feedback or anything like that. And speaking of, now is the moment. If you're watching this VOD or if you're watching the stream, now is your moment to get some free stuff. I'm gonna tell you how. So in order to get one of 3 $20 gift cards, all you gotta do is head on over to our Discord server. Link again is in the bottom down there. At Jonathan or myself, just go at Jonathan or at Andrew. I want to be entered to win for the gift card. You can DM us if you want to, and you'll be entered in for a chance to win. If you are like one of the only people that puts your name in, then you're probably going to win. But even if you're catching this VOD months later, there's still an opportunity to be part of this. So at one of us over here in the DevCycle Discord, at that link below, you can win a gift card. If you work for DevCycle, I'm sorry, you're not eligible. If you've won before, you're also not eligible. But anybody else that's on the stream and catching this, we'd love to give you some free money. So please at us.
The best kind of money, right?
The best kind of money. So like I said, all of these things are, these are all channels you can find us. You can also find us on, I think if you're, depending on where you're watching us right now, you can find us on X and LinkedIn and all these places. Anywhere you've got feedback, wherever you are that you want to let us know something that you want, chances are we're there. And if we're not there, then we probably should find you. Or send us an email, or just talk to us. Just yell.
I'm on Threads, so.
That's very true, we're on Threads. Threads is getting better, I gotta say. I'm happy that they're starting to roll out new features, but it's been a slow process. All right, so we've talked about open feature, we talked about KubeCon, we talked about some of the features that are on our roadmap. We've talked about who we are, what DevCycle is. I think we have talked about almost everything there is to talk about on a feature-focused stream. So I think we're almost at the very end, but I always like to leave whoever's the guest host with the final kind of word of the stream. So what is if somebody is only tuning in right now, what have they missed? Like, what's the exciting like TLDR for what this month was about for DevCycle?
Open feature is awesome. KubeCon was great to meet people in person, and yeah, if you're looking to adopt feature flags, take a look at open feature and using it with DevCycle first.
Love that. That was a great TLDR. I love that. Everybody who has been on the stream or will come on the stream, Adam, you're coming on next month, and that is your standard of the TLDR. You're probably gonna do something incredibly technical, so maybe not as easy, but you got a month to figure that out. So with all that being said, Jonathan, thank you so much for being here, for joining me. Thanks for kind of walking people through open feature as well. I think that's a really like outside of the DevCycle platform, I think it's just a really powerful to understand what that standard is all about. Yeah, so we will be back here on whatever channel you're watching us on next week. I think we're going to be back with doing another stream on HTMX, because that stream is hitting really well, the VOD of that. So we're going to be back looking at HTMX and feature flagging. We'll obviously be back at the end of next month with final feature focus. I'll probably wear a Santa hat because. But until next time, thank you everybody for tuning in today. It has been an incredible time to spend with Jonathan and with all of you. And we will see y'all around the DevCycle community. Bye-bye. See you next time.